So now would probably be the time to lead with a chant, but not being a monk, I'm not so good at the chants. So unless somebody else has one to start off, I'll just start by telling you the story. In September, I was in New York, and Swami Shantapanandaji from Delhi Center, who's the spiritual advisor for, we're being recorded anyway, so it's probably overhead on a little bit.
Yeah, just the country that.
Yeah, that's right. So I was in New York in September, in New York, and Swami Shantapanandaji came into town, and the first thing he said to me, you know, there was a lot of hustle and bustle because it was an event we were putting on. And he said, "So I hear you're a Baba now, you know, you're a guru." And of course, I was very horrified by that. And the first second I had to talk to him in private after that quick comment he made. I was like, "Who told you that? You know, I'm so much not that." And he was like, don't worry, it was a joke. I knew it would get a rise out of you. But giving a talk that I'm giving right now is a little iffy in some regards because typically in the Ramakrishna community, we don't talk about meditation quite as much because in the Ramakrishna community, usually you learn through the guru, which you get through initiation, through diksha. And that's so somebody who really knows what they're doing is going to teach you and make sure you get it right. So I always give a disclaimer before I do any talking or do any writing on spiritual topics because Swami Vivekananda said, you know, we all should think for ourselves. It has to make sense to you. Don't just follow blindly anyone. And you really have to think for yourself when it comes to me talking because, you know, I'll do the best I can, but obviously I have limitations. So this is more of a taste for those who aren't currently doing meditation and more of a reminder for those who are initiated, who do have probably much more of a meditation background than I do. So as I said, as I might have mentioned before this began, meditation is actually my weakest spiritual discipline. And because I grew up in Ohio in the United States. And in Ohio, you know, since Vedanta, these are universal truths. Even though I didn't know really any Indians at the time, I came to most of the truths in Vedanta on my own. But meditation, not so much, because that, again, is useful when you have a guru, and it's a little more structured. So when I went and lived at the Delhi Center, in the Ramakrishna Center in Delhi, after having been there a while, I knew that I needed to pick up my meditation practice. So I went to one of the monks, very sheepishly, shyly, said, you know, can you show me how to meditate? You know, because I really don't know that very well. And he was a very shy monk. He actually usually wouldn't speak, and he was a former editor of one of the Ramakrishna magazines, PB. So he gave an equally shy glance back at me and said, well, you know, I can't really teach you because, you know, like only a guru does that. And, you know, there's only a few of them in the order that can actually give this. So, of course, my next step was to go to Belur Mutt, which is the epicenter, I guess, of the Ramakrishna community. And I did get initiation through our current president, Maharaj, Swami Atmastanandaji. So I did eventually get initiated. I did get some training, but you know, this is like the top guy in the order. So unlike some gurus, there's not a lot of opportunity for follow-up. So my meditation practices are still somewhat green. So after that, I pretty much started to look for other ways to get a little training, which takes us kind of to where we are today. I thought, well, you know, the Ramakrishna community is mostly through guru, and I don't have access to my guru. So the Ramakrishna community believes that there are many paths to the same ultimate end. So I said, you know, I'm in Thailand. It's a Buddhist country. Buddhism is very strong on meditation. There are many paths that lead to the same ultimate end. And I'm associated with RVAT here in this Buddhist country, so it'd be good for me to know Buddhist meditation. So in the past few months, I've been, on 2 instances, I went to Buddhist monasteries and spent some time there meditating and learning from them. One was in Suratani, down south in Thailand, with the Buddhadasa, a monk, a Thai monk, started Wat Son Mok. And so I spent some time down there. And then most recently, last month, I spent some time at a Buddhist monastery in Bangkok, in Burma. And so I got to see it from a ever so slightly different perspective. And basically, the takeaway, and we will get to some meditation in about 2 minutes here. The main takeaways from these retreats were basically 4 things. There were 4 things that I got from attending these. First is, it was a wonderful reminder of ascetic life. Monks live very simply, and the reason they live simply is basically it helps with spiritual development. And it's harder when we're in the world to do and live as simply as a monk. And even to get a taste of it from time to time really puts things in perspective. And so like when I was there, we followed the 8 precepts in Buddhism. Some of them were harder than others, such as our last meal, I think, was like 11 a.m. The last meal of every day. It had to be before noon. And we slept on wooden pillows, which are just a slab of wood and basically on a concrete slab. So, you know, it was a little rough, but it was nice to be reminded that we don't need all those things, because going without a pillow was fine after about 2 days. I didn't need a pillow anymore. And also, of course, the second thing that really was the big takeaway for me and anybody who does a retreat is instruction on meditation. And that's something I'll talk about in just a second. But the big one, third one, is the time to meditate. We don't often get the time to really focus on meditation. Even when we do it, it might be a half hour here, a half hour there. But when I was doing retreats, it was 14 straight hours of meditation. All the worldly stuff was put to the side, and that diving deep was to do that periodically is a good thing to recenter us. And the fourth thing that I'll talk about at the very end after we've meditated, very briefly, is that what I got from the meditation retreats, both of them, were that really there's a lot of similarities among the different faiths. The stuff that I was being taught at these Buddhist monasteries was very applicable and similar to the sort of things that I was taught in the Ramakrishna monasteries. And at other monasteries I've been at, such as, I've been at Catholic monasteries too, and they basically are very, very similar. But let's not talk about my experience, let's get into a little bit of meditation. I've been asked to lead us through about 10 minutes of meditation, just enough to get a little taste, but not derail our program too long. Basically, the point, and I'm going to lead you through a Buddhist meditation, but then at the end I'll talk about how it is really quite similar to the Raja Yoga, which is the meditation through Vedanta. The point of the meditation is basically, not to think. It's to go beyond the mind in terms of, Vedanta, there's this idea there are levels of the mind. There's the part that stores memories, there's the part that does, takes the senses, there's the part that processes it all. And really, with meditation, it's to get away from that, and especially the ego, the part that we think of as the I. And if we sit down and focus on something, we get, and we start to dampen down that thinking thing. And when we do that, and we're very present in that moment, we start to see the impermanence of things. That a lot of the things we hold on to, that we think are ourselves, are not in fact us. And later on, at the very end, I'll connect that to Vedanta, which is slightly different than this Buddhist conception of everything not being us. But basically, that is largely the goal of most meditation, is to dive deep enough so you're not, you're getting beyond that ego and you're seeing what actually is, not what we think it is. And when we see, if we really get good at that, we reach moksha, or enlightenment, to use the Buddhist term. We reach nirvana, and that's the holy goal of it all. We're in this world, but we're not of it, or it is the other way around. The point is that things wash off of us like water off of the duck's back. So let's do 10 minutes of meditation. And the meditation I'm going to show you, this Buddhist meditation, is deceptively simple, like most meditations, but it's moderately hard, because controlling that mind can be a tough thing. So the first step is to sit comfortably, usually with your eyes closed or half closed. The point of that is to not be taken in by the external distractions, you know, not looking at other people, not seeing the incense, to go inward, not outward. So you can either close your eyes or half close them. You can keep them wide open if you are cocky enough to think that nothing will distract your focus. And then to sit comfortably on the ground in a way you can sit for 10, 20 minutes, whatever duration you're going to sit. And in this meditation, and this you can sit in a chair too if your joints aren't ready for the floor of sitting. And in this meditation, it's mostly going to be watching your breathing. And the way we're going to watch our breathing is you're going to focus on the tip of your nose, and you're going to watch the air come in through your nose and go into your chest, and you're going to watch it come out of your chest and go back out, in and out. And most of us who haven't done a lot of meditation will abstract it very quickly. We'll say, okay, you know, I'm breathing, I'm watching it, but we're not really watching it. Our minds have moved on to something else. But the point is to stay focused on actually watching the breathing come in and out. And you know, not to abstract it, to generalize it, to actually watch that in and out. And the reason we do that is because the mind is I don't remember who put it this way, but somebody in the Vedanta world, he said the mind is kind of like a drunk monkey on the back of a raging elephant. It's just going all over the place. And so by focusing on the breathing, we are giving the mind something to kind of pay attention to, so it doesn't take us this way and that way. And it sort of calms it like a little child. You know, you sit him down long enough and he'll stop getting wild. He'll lose his willpower to be mischievous a little bit. So that's what the breathing is. It's just focusing on that to get the mind focused. Now, you won't probably be able to keep your mind on the breathing the whole 10 minutes we're going to do this. The trick is, in this Buddhist meditation that I was taught in these 2 monasteries, was when you feel either like a pain in your knee or a back, a physical sensation, or you get a thought in your mind, acknowledge it and say, there's a thought, and then push it aside and return back to the main thing, which is the breathing. And probably all of us will have many times of pushing it aside, coming back. Don't judge the fact that you've varied from your main task, that you're thinking. Don't analyze your thoughts. It's not about the ideas that come up while you're meditating. What you do is just put it aside and then focus back on the breathing. And so we're going to do that for 10 minutes. And there will be a chime after about 10 minutes, which will tell us to wake up, and I'll talk for another 2 to 3 minutes and relate how this relates to Vedanta meditation. So let's all do a little bit of Buddhist meditation, starting right now. while I was in a monastery, they taught more than just sitting meditation. There actually typically, from what I've been taught, are 4 ways to meditate. One is sitting, like we just did. The other one is standing. Another is walking. And the other one is lying down. Now, sitting has sort of become, the big one, but everyone I talked to in these Buddhist monasteries was like, no, they're all equal. Because basically they're all the same thing. It's about being present in the moment and giving yourself something to focus on. So with sitting, standing, and lying down, you're focusing on the breath. We did a lot of walking meditation as well, though, which is instead of focusing on the breath, you focus on steps. You walk very slowly, kind of like a zombie, actually. It looked an awful lot like the TV show The Walking Dead, except your arms were up. And you walk very slowly, and you would pay attention to the lifting of the foot, the moving of the foot, the dropping of the foot, the pressure on the foot, and then the other foot doing the same thing. And by focusing on that, it's basically the same thing as when you're doing it sitting with the breathing. And the way that we would do it in the monasteries was we would alternate between these different forms, pretty much the walking and the sitting. Unless you have real joint problems, then your sitting would often become a standing meditation. And because, who can sit for 14 straight hours? Not many people. So you'd alternate, but more or less the whole time you'd be present, and you'd be ideally not doing the whole ego thinking thing. So there are more than one, there are 4 ways typically. And then you mix it up. Now, Buddhist meditation, the one that I was shown at both these monasteries, was strikingly similar to the meditation we do in Vedanta, which is in the Ramakrishna community, at least, it's called Raja Yoga. Probably everybody in this room knows this, but there's basically 4 main spiritual paths or practices in the Ramakrishna Vedanta canon. One is meditation, which we call Raja Yoga, and then there's also Bhakti Yoga, which is through devotion, usually love towards God. Then there's Jnana Yoga, which is the intellectual side of it, and there's Karma Yoga, which is through good actions, through service that's selfless, basically. And so one of the 4 yogas is, in fact, meditation. And actually, Swami Vivekananda, who founded the Ramakrishna order, wrote a book about it. I think the only book he might have actually typed instead of talked it. And you can actually get this for free online, among other places, at my website, vedanta.org/meditation. So you can actually pick up this book and read it. Swami Vivekananda will give you a much deeper version of the Vedanta version. But basically, it's the same. Now, the Raja Yoga taught by Ramakrishna community is, on the surface, a little bit different. You focus on a deity, usually on the chosen deity, instead of on the breathing, although you also can focus on the breathing. And you usually have a mantra, a series of words that you will repeat while you're doing the meditation. But if you think about it, what is the mantra on a certain level but a way to focus the breath? Instead of focusing on the breath, you kind of got the mantra to keep the brain in line a little bit, to keep it not going around wild. So, for those that do know the Vedanta meditation, you probably already have sort of noticed that these things are kind of similar to each other, and in fact they are, and they are across meditation practices of all faiths, including Catholic, because as I said, I've also done meditation at those places. Now this makes sense, though, that the Vedanta meditation and the Buddhist meditation would be very similar, because at its core, it could be argued at least that Buddhism kind of is a subset of Vedanta. Whereas in Vedanta, we've got the 4 yogas, the 4 main paths. Buddhism typically focuses on this one Raja Yoga path. Meditation is a pretty big thing in Buddhism. That's the thing. And instead of, in Buddha, instead Vedanta, we also talk about God, and we talk about God in many different ways, many different incarnations of God. In Buddhism, the Buddha just says, let's not go near that. I want us to get really practical here. I'm going to give you a practical spiritual thing, meditation, which is, doesn't require a lot of abstract. Just do this, you'll get there. So some would argue, at least, that in Buddhism, it's not actually saying no to God, although later some said it was. But Buddha really just ignored the topic. He said, I'm not going near there. The Buddha was a yogi in India. He was one of them, right along with the other people who, basically led to Vedanta. So really, Buddhism and Vedanta are actually a lot similar. Buddhism is just focused on one path. We have that path in Vedanta. We have that path in the Ramakrishna community. And you can be, when we are practicing Raja Yoga, we're basically practicing Buddhism. We could definitely argue that we are Buddhist if we're engaged in that form of spiritual practice. Just as you could say that the Buddhist is also a Vedanta. He's just picking a very particular form of spiritual practice, whereas Vedanta has others that Buddhist says, well, you could do that maybe, but we're going to stay to this one. So the two main points of all this, and I'm just about done for those who are keeping time, is that basically meditation is basically a practical way to train ourselves to tap into something deeper that is beyond the whole thinking part of ourselves. It's one of the ways to get to that universal truth and to train ourselves to see it in every moment, because as we meditate and do it more, we get better at focusing on here and now and seeing what is instead of all the stuff we've built up in our heads. And that's why it's Raja Yoga, the royal road to enlightenment. The second thing is, as I mentioned, that really Buddhism and Vedanta don't have to be as far apart as we sometimes like to think they are. Ramakrishna himself said that, he used the example of water. He said water, same substance, but we can call it jol, we can call it pani, we can call it agua, we can call it water. Same thing, different language, but we're still basically talking about the same thing. And so the Vedantins might have more approaches to that enlightenment than most Buddhist organizations. And Buddhists may ignore the topic of God or really not want to go near that, whereas the Vedantins often do. But Buddhism is, in fact, completely within the canon of Vedanta, and you can practice that and still very much be Vedanta. They're a lot closer than most of us seem to think. And there's a lot of confusion in this world for how to live a good life, and a lot of people are fight over like my way is best, my way is best. But in closing, as Vedantins, we're in a great place to. Our specialty is the fact that there are many paths, and so we're in a pretty good place to say, wait a minute, Buddhism, Vedanta, even things like Catholicism, on the surface, it's jal and pani. On a deeper level, it's not really that different, and it ends up at the same place. And we have that opportunity as Vedantins, especially here in Thailand, in RVAT, where we're in a Buddhist country, which is closer than like Christian in terms of it being obvious how similar we are. We have a great opportunity to bring people together and just to clear up some of that confusion and get us, all of us, going on a good path that ultimately leads to that enlightenment and to really where I think we're all trying to get to. So thank you for giving me more than 20 minutes to talk. I hope you've gotten something out of this little intro.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
So, take it over now? Okay, good.
We're extremely pleased that all of you took the time to come in this evening. And